You're listening to the Future Tech Health Podcast with Richard Jacobs. Until I reached age 40, I never realized the obvious, that we all have medical issues, or we at least have a family member or close relation that had, has, or will have them in the future. Medicine and biological systems are the final frontier. Until we've conquered death, figured out how life began, cured cancer, and understood our purpose in the universe, there's a heck of a lot to talk about when it comes to our health. Future Tech Health means I'll be covering futuristic topics that are actually already in clinical trials, or even starting to appear on shelves or by prescription, or available for your own use. We dive deep into stem cells, CRISPR-Cas9, the science of sleep, epigenetics, medical testing, cancer, ketogenic diets, stem cells, aging, regenerative medicine, and more. My goal for you, the listener, is to learn from these podcasts. You may very well learn something that may change the course of your life for the better, steer you towards a new career, or give you insight into addressing a serious medical problem. Remember, however, this podcast and its content is informational in nature only. No medical, tax, legal, financial, or psychological advice is being given. If you enjoyed the podcast, please listen, subscribe, like, and share it with friends. Thank you. Hello, this is Richard Jacobs with the Future Tech and Future Tech Health podcast, and I have Bruce Sanguin. He's an author of a book called Dismantled, How Love and Psychedelics Broke a Clergyman Apart and Put Him Back Together Again. And Bruce is a psychotherapist living on Denman Island in British Columbia, where he practices. Before he took early retirement, he was a minister in a progressive church for 28 years, and now he works as a guide for individuals who make pilgrimages to the island or through Skype. He does intensive sessions and integration therapy with plant medicines. He's also a renowned speaker in the field of evolutionary spirituality and the author of 7 acclaimed books related to evolving spirituality. So, Bruce, thanks for coming. How you doing?
You're welcome. It's good to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I would bet because of what you do, you're asked every single time to relate, your story of how you came to be in the position you're in. So, if you wouldn't mind, maybe you can give a little bit of background on your life and how you got to this, the place you're at right now.
Sure. Well, as you mentioned in the introduction to me, told a little bit of my story. I spent 30 years actually in a progressive church here in Canada called the United Church of Canada. That was my career, and sort of preaching every Sunday and doing the clergy thing. And then it became clear to me that my time was over, and decided to take early retirement. And I knew I had some growing to do in that I had fallen in love with my soulmate. And in the context of the growing intimacy, there some issues came up that were related to me mostly. And I realized I had some blocks that were keeping me from going more deeply. Something was getting in the way of expressing this sort of deep love that I had. And so a friend told me about an ayahuasca ceremony, and would I like to come? So the timing was perfect, and off I went to my first of many ayahuasca ceremonies. And subsequently, I started into psychedelic psychotherapy with a therapist and did about a dozen sessions that were 4 to 5 hours each long, and using a combination of MDMA and LSD.
Quick question here. You were a clergyman for, nearly 30 years. So when someone first suggested to you, come do an ayahuasca ceremony, did you just say, yeah, it sounds great? Or were you thinking, no, there's no way I would do that? Did you have reservations?
I had no reservations, actually. I mean, the reservation was that, like everyone has a little bit of apprehension about taking a substance which is going to render you more or less out of control for a time. And so it was that apprehension more than anything else. But in terms of, the illegality of it, or I didn't have any kind of Christian sense of morality that there was something inherently wrong with it. I had been curious for a long time about visionary substances, so-called entheogens. It's just that in the context of this career in the church, it just wasn't going to work for me to be going off to ceremonies and taking these medicines. So when I finally ended that. This was an opportunity to explore those dimensions of my being and reality. Yeah.
Okay. Um, what about spiritually? Did you have a problem with trying this, or how did you think this would affect your spirituality, and did it?
Well, my hunch was that it would only deepen my spirituality, and that is certainly true. I mean, I was taken into dimensions and domains of experience that ordinary consciousness don't make available. And the word psychedelic means literally the opening of the mind to the heart, the revealing of the mind to the depths of what's there. And in ordinary conventional reality, some people do, but I didn't have access to these deeper dimensions. And so, the realm of the invisible and the ancestral realm opened up to me, and just some kind of fundamental principles of reality were suddenly obvious to me, just about the nature of reality itself in the big picture. And I felt more connected to source, however you want, whatever term you want to use, God is the great mystery, than actually I ever did in my years as a clergyman. I mean, I've often quipped that the best preparation for clergy would be to, do a psilocybin journey or an ayahuasca journey or LSD or MDMA. But of course, that's not likely to happen anytime soon.
Yeah. So you weren't able to feel, the presence of God, or, again, whatever you want to call it. But when you were, trying ayahuasca or MDMA or these other substances, you felt it?
Let's just say it was heightened. It's not that in my years as in the church, but I think my years as a clergy person is, it was more intellectual or rational in a way. I was a, good thinker, big ideas. And it's not that those ideas were off. In fact, some of them were confirmed in my experience of psychedelics. It's just that, you enter more into the realm of of the mystical, of the direct experience, kind of hearing about it or talking about it. You actually, at least this is my experience, I actually was in it. And with this kind of intuitive knowing that happens.
Yeah. Can you relate even a little bit of an impactful experience you had? Some of the details. What was it like? What did you feel?
Yeah, I mean, I guess especially in the early ayahuasca journeys, is a profound sense that despite appearances, everything ultimately is okay. I think it's Julian of Norwich, she's a Christian mystic, says, "And all shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well." And so, I was just dropped into this realm of consciousness where, sort of a view from 60,000 feet, and saw that there's an underlying perfection to everything, despite the fact that in the manifest realm of time and space, obviously everything's not okay. But in some ultimate sense, there's just a sense that everything is fine, and you are fine, Bruce. And for me, I was taken into deep gratitude, with a sense that I wanted to bow in some kind of devotion before the great mystery and just express profound gratitude for the experience of life. I saw that life itself was the ultimate value and ultimate worth, and I just wanted to be on my knees and give thanks, and developed a kind of authentic posture of devotion and gratitude and awe before the mystery of it all. And that I got a chance at this life, and I got a chance to be, it's a great gift. Don't squander it. And of course, there are also the experiences where you realize that sort of the transcendent dimension, that everything is interconnected and everything is the manifestation of a great unity. This unity that gets expressed in diversity. And so you look around, and when you're in this deep connection with Source, or almost identified with Source, one of the pieces of wisdom that came to me was just to know deeply that the goal of the journey was to be myself. And then I looked around at everyone else in the room who was doing, and just the mantra was, just be yourself. Just relax and be yourself. That's what you're here for. And if you're being yourself, you're a deep manifestation, or you're a deep expression of the love out of which this and other universes were born and continue to be born moment by moment. But the only way to do that is to drop into your unique self. And of course, a big part of the journey from that point on is around the question, what's getting in the way of being my unique self? How come I am unable to simply relax and breathe into the individual that I was born to be? And then the conversation moves from transcendence into trauma, into failures of love. And out of that experience of the various kinds of failures of love, especially in early childhood, for me, what came online was that I developed a whole bunch of core unconscious beliefs about myself and reality that were preventing me from being who I am. And I just call these cubs core unconscious beliefs. And they're like, I'm bad. There's something wrong with me. I'm too much. I'm not enough. If I'm not what you want me to be, I'm going to die. So, this model, this map of reality, which involves core unconscious beliefs and the dismantling of those core unconscious beliefs, is something that came to me in the medicine. And it's a model that I now work with clients who come to the island or talk to me on Skype too. Because in the presence of these beliefs, they basically create our reality.
Since you worked with many people and you've had your own issues, is there a common set of beliefs that people have that appear to originate in childhood that hold them back?
Yeah, I think there are. I think there's sort of some core unconscious beliefs, and I mentioned a few. One is that I'm bad. One is that I don't deserve love. Another is I don't belong. Another is there's something wrong with me. Another is I'm too much, so I need to die. Or another could be I'm not enough, so I need to try harder to be who you need me to be in order to survive. So my experience over time is that these, there are 5 or 6 or 7 of these core beliefs that are sort of common to most clients that I'm seeing on these intensive journeys that I do in the medicine with them. And then it's a matter of helping them to differentiate from that belief that at one point was an intelligent conclusion about themselves because of how they're being treated. But now in this process of differentiation, realizing that it was an intelligent conclusion then, but it's not serving you now. And so you can dissolve that belief.
How could it have been an intelligent conclusion? You mean the person just thought, well, this makes sense and this is who I am?
Yeah. Well, what happens is that if, for example, take I am bad, because there's such a profound failure of love, the only conclusion that little one can come to is that there must be something wrong with me. I must be bad. And the reason is that it's actually intelligent, because if the person upon whom I'm dependent for my survival is bad, then I'm really screwed. A life that's that precarious, so they can't be bad, or I won't survive. So it must be me that's bad. And if I'm bad, at least I can do something about it. I can try to change. I can try to figure out what they need me to be. I can, But if they're bad, I'm hooped. There's literally nothing I can do. So that's an intelligent response to these particular conditions of life. The same with there's something wrong with me. Well, then, there can't be something wrong with this other, because if there is, my life depends on them something not being wrong with them. So I'll take, if the choice is between there being something wrong with me or being bad myself and something wrong with them or they're bad, I'll choose myself every time. You just can't figure it out as a little one. You say, why aren't they loving me? Why aren't they connecting me? Why are they rejecting me? Why are they hurting me? Why, there's got to be some fundamental flaw within me. And it's not actually true, but they're being treated as though it's true. And that's why the opportunity in this business of spiritual and psychological and emotional growth is to realize that those were premature, nevertheless intelligent, but premature conclusions about the nature of self and reality. And now they can be updated and they need to be dismantled because I'm not bad. I'm a radiant, beautiful incarnation of this love and intelligence out of which whole universes are emerging. And that's who I fundamentally am. I just forgot that because of what happened to me.
So what are some of the other common experiences that people have when they're, kids or adolescents that, cause them to have these damaging beliefs?
Well, the common experiences are all the way from simply mothers who are unable, for whatever reasons, to emotionally attach to their children, to neglectful parents, to parents who are indifferent, to parents who sexually abuse, or family members, extended family members or friends of the family who sexually abuse, or physical violence. All of these are various forms of trauma that I just call failures of love. And what I know from my experience in the medicine is that we showed up for love. We showed up for connection. We showed up for deep intimacy. We showed up for joy. And it's so traumatic to discover that these things aren't on offer. And then what we have to do is simply go into survival mode. And in that survival mode, we develop our personalities, which basically are defense structures to help us get through that period of time. And then what happens, and this is why I called the book Dismantled, is that I realized that I had structured my whole personality as a defense against the terrible realization of these failures of love. Because when you're a little kid, when you're a little one going through these are too much to bear. They're literally unbearable. And so you have to do something about that. And you repress the experience, you deny the experience, and the medicine just keeps showing you over and over and over again that you're going to have to get healthy, you're going to have to suffer the truth. And that involves, people show up, and a lot of what happens in the beginning is they start seeing this, and then they start grieving. They start suffering they start feeling the pain of what was too painful to bear when they were young. And they discover that they can actually feel it now and survive. But they don't know that until they have the experience of it. And then in the context, why psychotherapy is so important is that, in my opinion, all trauma is a failure of relationship. And so healing ultimately doesn't come through the psychedelic medicine. That just opens you up. It's just a tool. The healing comes when a person discovers that, there's at least one other person in the universe that is trustworthy. There's at least one other person I can relax with and not be hurt. There's at least one other person that I can start breathing again and not have to be on edge and not have to be vigilant and not have to prove myself. And if there's one other person, then maybe they represent the universe, not the parents that I had growing up. And suddenly you discover the difference between being in the world in a condition of distrust versus being in the world in a condition of deep trust and that the universe has your back.
So you were a clergyman for a very long time. Was part of your work to counsel people when they had problems, or was that other people in the church?
No, I did quite a bit of that. I had trained as a psychotherapist at the same time I was going into seminary, and there was a toss-up which vocation I'd choose, and I ended up choosing the church. But I kind of knew that when that was done, I'd go into private practice. But yes, I did counseling, and it would have been really good to know some of the things that I know now through direct experience when I was doing this counseling. But we can only be where we're at.
Do you look back and see that you were telling people things that maybe weren't helpful or wrong, or you just didn't have the tools you have now to help them out?
Yeah. No, it's not that I wasn't wrong. And in fact, intuitively, I was probably right on, but it's different when you have the direct experience of having realized your own trauma. So that if you're working with a person who's traumatized and you're not coming from a place where you've already yourself worked through your own trauma, you've grieved, you've suffered, you've come through it, and you know that it's possible to come through it. It's just you have a different kind of presence with that person. They just feel it energetically that this is a person who's been there. They've been in the trenches. They've been to hell and they've come back. Okay, let's go. they're maybe a little more willing to trust.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So when you do these sessions with people, how are they getting the plant medicine? Just on their own, or they're taking it, or after they've taken it, they speak to you, or how does it work?
Yeah, what works is they decide that they want to come to the island and do a bit of a pilgrimage out here. It's beautiful British Columbia and it's island life, and it's so serene. And then the session itself is, anywhere from 4 to 6 hours with a follow-up session the next day, and then integration after that. Um, and they get the medicine themselves. I can help with a source, but I don't provide it for them, and I don't give it to them. They take it themselves. So they arrive with the medicine of their choice, and then usually about half an hour before they take it, and then I show up, and then we're actively into the journey after about 30 minutes to 45 minutes.
Okay, and then how is the first experience versus subsequent experiences? Do a lot of people have tremendous healing on the first, or does it take much longer for them to experience some healing?
Yeah, well, the first experience can be profoundly transformative, but I think it's critical for people to realize that. As I outlined in my own book, I had dozens of experiences of ayahuasca, and then back to back to back to back sessions of psychedelic psychotherapy. So it's not a one-shot thing, and it's most effective when there's follow-up sessions for sure. But many people experience their first session as profoundly transformative, and they just naturally want to continue. And I think the continuation of it is important because, as I was saying, the healing comes through relationship. Like, our hearts are broken in the context of relationship, and our hearts are healed in the context of relationship. And building that kind of trusting relationship happens over time. It's not automatic. And what I'm saying is that you can have profound insights and revelations on the medicine, which are beautiful and true. But then in terms of translating that into your, coming down from there, going back into intimate relationships with your beloved other, it takes a lot of integration then to translate this experience into an intimate relationship with the other.
Well, do you find that couples need to do this, or is it okay for one person in the relationship to do it first and then talk to the other, or what works better?
Everybody's different. I think I know it's very powerful for couples to do this medicine together. I would say particularly with MDMA, because couples can get stuck in unhelpful patterns and unhelpful reactions to each other. And on the medicine, they are able to suspend those defensive reactions and just kind of bring a mindfulness to it and see them for what they are without getting triggered by each other. And MDMA, for example, is an empathogen, which means it creates a condition of profound empathy for the other. So where couples who've been fighting for years and years and years, they can come in, take this medicine, and see what they're doing, and open their hearts to each other. So that's very powerful sessions when a couple is willing to be in the medicine together in the context of couple therapy.
Yeah, if one person has the medicine, and they go back to talk to the other person, I don't know. Are they received well, or does it throw the relationship into a new paradigm, or unseat it or unsettle it? Does it work that way if just one person does?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I do think it creates a new threshold for possibilities for intimacy, to deepen intimacy. On the one hand, that can be very threatening. So it depends on the couple. If you're in a situation where, say a woman is kind of further down the path of kind of her spiritual path and journey, and is emotionally a bit more sophisticated with her feelings, and her man goes off to do ayahuasca or LSD or MDMA and comes back with all the insights, the woman's not going to be threatened. She's going to, she's going to be happy. She's going to say, that's great, and she's going to be encouraging. If, however, one or the other person kind of takes a a leap forward in terms of their desire for an increase in intimacy, then the old patterns are going to have to dissolve between them in terms of what their relationship had been. And that can be threatening, and that has to be worked through. So I do think these medicines have the potential to catapult us into a new threshold for intimacy, and that can either be welcomed or a source of threat, depending on the couple itself and the condition of the two individuals in their relationship.
What can people do to prepare or to make sure that that's less likely to happen?
Well, have a intentional conversation with your partner, and first of all, check out, is he or she interested in going down this path? And if not, how would they feel about you as an individual going down it? And just make sure there's a lot of clarity and a lot of transparency between you. And then, obviously, when you come back, you in the sharing of the experience, it requires sensitivity and compassion for your partner who wasn't on it, because they can feel threatened, because maybe if you've gone to an ayahuasca journey, there's a whole new community there of sort of co-warriors now who've been through some kind of ordeal that she or he hasn't been through, and you need to know that you're not leaving them behind, that you very much want to include them in the experience and answer all their questions.
Is there an order to different substances? Do you always start with ayahuasca? For some people it be psilocybin and then transition? I mean, what's the wisdom there?
Yeah, it's very unique to each individual. It just, I would say, trust in intuitive calling. Like, it's mysterious why people would feel called to a medicine like ayahuasca, because it's not exactly, an easy, fluffy spiritual experience. It's a demanding medicine that's going to take you into your truth. But, that journey is, going to be difficult. But nevertheless, most people will say that they actually felt called to be there. So trust that voice that says, okay, it's time. Or trust the voice that says, not now. But and apply that to the various possibilities of medicine, whether it's MDMA, ayahuasca, psilocybin, LSD, washuma, peyote, whatever it is. Really check in with yourself and even listen to your dreams, because sometimes the medicine will come to us in dreams and indicating that, okay, the time is right for you. But the main thing is to really treat this as a spiritual path, not as a one-off experience. There's nothing wrong with kind of showing up and seeing what it's all about. But I think ideally these plants and these medicines, there's a deep intelligence that's wanting to come alive in every person. And so, they offer the possibility that you could actually change your whole orientation in life and to live more richly, more in touch with the earth, more connected to source. And that ultimately is going to change how you are in relationship, how you relate to the natural world, how you live, the food you eat, how you treat people, how you treat yourself. So it becomes the potential for a whole new spiritual path to open up to you.
Okay. What's the best way for people to get in touch and ask questions and find out more?
Yeah, if they go to brucesanguin.ca, just my name, brucesanguin.ca, there's a contact sheet there. And if they want to know a little more about me and the work I've done, the book Dismantled is basically kind of a memoir of some of my experiences, along with sort of philosophical and spiritual reflections, plus the kind of the map of psychotherapy that I use. So they could also check that out. And but yeah, the best way is on my website, brucesanguin.ca.
All right, very good. Well, Bruce, thanks for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
You're listening to the Future Tech Health Podcast with Richard Jacobs. Until I reached age 40, I never realized the obvious, that we all have medical issues, or we at least have a family member or close relation that has, or will have them in the future. Medicine and biological systems are the final frontier. Until we've conquered death, figured out how life began, cured cancer, and understood our purpose in the universe, there's a heck of a lot to talk about when it comes to our health. Future Tech Health means I'll be covering futuristic topics that are actually already in clinical trials, or even starting to appear on shelves or by prescription, or available for your own use. We dive deep into stem cells, CRISPR-Cas9, the science of sleep, epigenetics, medical testing, cancer, ketogenic diets, stem cells, aging, regenerative medicine, and more. My goal for you, the listener, is to learn from these podcasts. You may very well learn something that may change the course of your life for the better, steer you towards a new career, or give you insight into addressing a serious medical problem. Remember, however, this podcast and its content is informational in nature only. No medical, tax, legal, financial, or psychological advice is being given. If you enjoy the podcast, please listen, subscribe, like, and share it with friends. Thank you.